Welcome to the second episode of Take Notice Amplifying Black Stories. I'm your host, Allison Preisinger-Higgins. To begin, I believe it's important to recognize, to take notice of the voices that are so often unheard. Land acknowledgement statements are an important part of honoring those whose land we now live and work on. Taking the time to acknowledge this allows us to continue to learn how to do better. So, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which I am creating this recording today and the recording of the interview for today's episode. I would like to show gratitude to the traditional ancestral land of the Tulalip, the Snohomish, the Stillaguamish, the Saxuatl, Shoalwater Bay, and Chinook tribes, recognizing that these names are not the original names of the people of these areas. As I continue to learn how to better acknowledge Native people of these lands, I will adjust the wording of the beginning of each episode. I encourage listeners to research the land on which you live and are listening right now. Thank you for joining us for our second episode, and thanks to everybody who listened to the very first episode we released before the election was over with Joy Stanford. I had a great time speaking with Joy, and I hope to connect with her in person one day when the pandemic is over and we're able to do that. We're excited to begin bringing you episodes on a regular basis now, so you will now receive a new episode into your favorite podcast app once a week on Tuesdays. We will bring you 3 episodes this month in December and then start back up on the 5th of January. So if you have yet to subscribe, please do so. Now, while this project is focused on amplifying Black stories, my hope is that we will get to know each other as each episode is released. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a background about how this project began, and then as each episode progresses, as they are released, I will just continue that conversation with you all. So first, admittedly, I initially struggled with whether or not it was my place as a white woman to be the host of a podcast trying to amplify Black stories. Who was I to take on a project like this? How would it come across? After many conversations with those close to me and those interested in the project, all of those questions that I had were released and relieved when I was reminded of the simple fact that we are all human. We all share a painful history in this country, with the hopes that more and more of us will do our part to try to shape a better future for all of us. Originally, the idea for this project came to mind in January of 2019 out of conversations I would have with my husband on race and culture. My eyes, since meeting him, but even before that, have been open to so much by being able to have messy conversations comfortably. I wanted to find a way to give others that same benefit and privilege, and this project was finally set in motion this past summer. It was time to take action, and this is my form of action, among other things. Our mission at Take Notice is to create conversation, provide an amplified platform for those who want to use it to share their story in the hopes of fostering understanding, acceptance, and growth for anyone who chooses to listen. My hope is that our guests feel comfortable in the environment we create and maybe feel a little bit lighter after our conversations, at least for a moment. Hopefully that feeling extends to our listeners as well. I'm really glad to be sharing my conversation with operations director and owner of a new Black-owned coffee shop in Shoreline, Washington called Black Coffee Northwest. Darnesha Weary has been involved in the North Seattle community through a variety of youth programs and now through Black Coffee Northwest, as it serves as a home base for those programs as well as for the community. It's a safe place for youth and for the entire community to connect while enjoying coffee. You should definitely follow them on social media to keep up with what they're doing. It's all really beautiful stuff. Darnesha and I had a fantastic time while we were talking a few weeks ago, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you all. So please enjoy my conversation with Darnesha Weary. Well, welcome, Darnesha, to Take Notice. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to chat with you, and I'm really excited to be able to, in our small way, promote Black Coffee Northwest. But yeah, maybe we can start with a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up or your background.
Sure. Hi. Thank you so much for having me today. So I grew up actually in the Seattle area. So I grew up in South Seattle area as a child and then moved out to North Seattle and middle school, and started coming out to the north end of Seattle, where there wasn't a lot of people that look like me out here, and so it was a huge culture shock for me to come from a space where everyone looked like me, and then to a space where I was the only one in every space. And so that really is a part of my childhood story, is how I was able to navigate through that. But born and raised Seattle. I do love this area. I promised I was going to leave for college, but I ended up staying. Then after college, I was still like, I'm leaving, but nope. I ended up getting married and have kids. And so I think we're going to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hear you. I grew up a little north of Seattle, and I keep thinking, well, I'll go explore somewhere else. And I did for college, but then here I am, I'm back. So
Yeah. Tell me
kind
about
of get
it.
your roots in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did your parents do when you were growing up?
My parents were actually ministers in church, and so I grew up heavily as like a church kid, which meant, I would say, in my community, it really meant that I was in church. I say Sunday through Sunday, but pretty much we were
Yeah.
heavily involved. We were like in the children's church. I was leading praise and worship and Bible studies. And so we really were church kids. All of my friends were my other pastors' kids, and that was my friend group. So that's how I grew up.
Awesome. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Do you have siblings too that grew up in the church with you?
I do. I have a sister who's 3 years younger than me, and then I have a half brother who's in California right now, and then a stepsister who's in South Seattle. So, yep.
Oh, awesome. My I've had friends, and my husband grew up in South Seattle, and then we lived in Shoreline before COVID hit, and he has had similar reflections on how it feels to be living in North Seattle. Do you feel like it's the same now as it was when you were younger, or has it changed, improved?
I would say that the land, I mean, I can look around and I can see more people, more like Black and brown people out in this area, which is really great. It was a tough experience for me living out here as a
Mm.
Black youth. It was really, I would sometimes describe it as traumatic for me now that I reflect back. And this is before people had the language or even wanted to actually talk about these things. And so it was really tough for me growing up. I can't say that it's gotten better. I feel like people are just now open to conversation. And also people are open to the idea that the way they grew up is different from someone else's, which is
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting, when you can put names or, like, terms to what you went through in the past, it kinda can
Hmm.
help you sort things out and things, so that's interesting. I was talking about that with a friend the other day. It's like, "Oh, there's a word for that." So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep, we have words for those things, and it's really helpful. I mean, it really is to have the language because it acknowledges it, and then we're able to start healing it, right, and moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did you go to college? Did you go in Seattle? Is that what you said?
I did. I actually went to
Yeah.
Puget Sound Christian College, which is
Okay.
in Seattle, and then I finished at Capella, so online. It took a long time for me to finish school because in the middle of that, I ended up getting married, having a baby. But
Mm.
online school was like the best thing for me. So I finished at Capella, got my master's there as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Awesome. What'd you get your master's in?
in family counseling.
Oh, okay. Were you doing some of that work before you decided to open up the business, or?
I was in the nonprofit sector for all of my career, actually. I started in the nonprofit sector and really used those skills of like counseling and some mental health background. And really, my whole goal in life was always just to help people,
Hmm.
just to help them to reach their goals or to come out of whatever they were in, just if it was addiction or mental illness, like how can I help? And that's really how I've shaped my work. It was just hard trying to fit that into other people's systems and ideas of what that looks like. And so even in my nonprofit career, I had a hard time kind of acclimating to the way they wanted to do it. And because I was like, I want to do this differently.
Yeah, I know very little about your business so far, just from what I've seen through social media and on your website, but it seems like that definitely comes through in your all's approach to the business and just what's reflecting in the online world of it. So that's pretty wonderful and important. Yeah.
Very important to us. Yes.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about what kind of sparked Black Coffee Northwest?
Absolutely. And so I'll say that I started doing community work. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I didn't have a name for it. All I wanted to do was help people. And so 20 years ago, I walked into the North Seattle Boys and Girls Club, which is in the Greenwood area, because I had heard that through gentrification, a lot of Black and brown kids were ending up in the North End because usually, they're in the central district of Seattle, which is an area predominantly Black. That's where my grandparents live. That's where we grew up. But gentrification came and started pushing families out. And so in the North End, there were a lot of Black children, Black and brown children kind of showing up, right? In the neighborhood, there were families moving here. And I saw that our community wasn't ready for that. They didn't know how to respond. They didn't know what to do. I start seeing the police be called more and more. I started seeing kids being like just kind of outside hanging out. And I wanted to create something for kids to do and kids that were Black. So what I did is I started a step team. And so the step team, we started with like 4 kids. And what stepping is, it is deeply rooted in African culture and tradition. And it basically is you're making music with your body using everything but like actual music. So you're making beats and rhythms with your hands, with your feet. And the whole idea of stepping is communicating and telling a story. So telling a story of happiness, talking about what's going on in your community, if it's turmoil. And so we put chants to that, which I could equate to maybe like a rap song or music that's talking about, the youth's voice and what's going on. And so I just started it. Now, this is me. I'm like just coming inside and like, hey, I want to start this group. They didn't know what it was. Everyone's kind of looking at me, but they let me do it. And so I started with about 5 kids. And we marched in the Greenwood Parade. I'll never forget that day. That was our first performance. We just had like T-shirts and it was pretty bad. T-shirt, like shorts. I was like, just go. But that's what sparked my passion for serving the community, is that when you see a need or when you see things that need to happen, I just need to do it. I need to figure out a way to serve. And so since then, I started that in 2000. And since then, that program has grown. We were flown down to California 2 years ago to do a video with the artist Lizzo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and sisterhood. And I was able to bring 20 young Black girls with me, we were flown down. We stayed in a nice, we had the limo. We were
Wow.
living fancy.
Yeah.
But for like a 10-year-old girl who would never have the opportunity, I wanted to make sure they had that. And so that's really what sparked and what keeps me going, is that I want to build things in a non-traditional way. I want to provide spaces and that just respond to the need. So what's happening right now? Not planning for, and we are also planning for what's happening in the future, but we also want to plan for what's happening right now in this moment. And so I've been doing this work. So I brought my husband along. He's working at Microsoft at the time, was not interested in any of this at all. But I was like, I need help, because it just started growing and growing and growing. And so we started
Yeah.
Drumline, like a Southern style drumline that went along with the steppers, and start pulling in more and more kids, start traveling, took kids to Disneyland every single year for about 15 years, and we fundraised for that. We sold everything, washed every car, because I didn't want any kid to ever be turned away from having the opportunity to go to Disneyland. And so we took kids to Vegas for a competition. That was an adventure.
Yeah,
That was
I
fun.
bet.
But I never had a place to do it. I never had a place to call home. It was always
Mm.
just wherever we were, or in my garage. So I
Mm.
took over my husband's workspace in the garage, and it's full of like Easter eggs and all kind of whatever art supplies and things to do programming with, because that's
Mm.
just what I've done. Even with my full-time job, every single Friday night, I was doing an outreach event in this area for Black and brown teens, because there was
Mm.
nothing else for them. So we did
Mhm.
basketball tournaments, we've done dance contests, whatever, tutoring. We did Doctor for a Day with doctors from UW, which is awesome. So I
Wow.
just learned like collaborating with other organizations and keeping my ear to the ground. What's happening is what works. And so Black Coffee is just an opportunity to take that work and call it home, to take the work that we've already been doing in the community and just have a space to do it at. And so I am so excited for that. Even after we had like a soft opening, I was telling the kids, I'm like, oh, we got to pack up my car, because we're so used to like packing up my car at the ends, right? And then I have to take
Right.
everything back home. But we're like, oh no, like it actually gets to stay here. And that
Mm.
was the best moment of the day is that we have a place now that we can do this work and be intentional, not have to ask for permission from someone else or have 12 meetings about it. We can just do it. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that part. Yes.
Yeah, just being able to turn off the lights, go home, and come back, that's gonna save a lot of energy, I bet.
It is. It's gonna save a
Yeah.
lot of energy, and it's also showing and most of the and 90% of the operations that we're doing right now, we have kids, we have youth as young as 11 running them. So our social medias are run by youth, our barista team, like our marketing promotions, and we paired them up with an adult professional in that field for mentoring. But
Oh, wow.
even that, I was like, I have to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable and that we're training the next generation to do this. I
Mhm.
didn't understand entrepreneurship and owning my own. I'm now into my 40s now, but we have kids now who are presidents and vice presidents of our company who are in their teens. And they
Wow.
are black and brown in that space where there's not a lot of black and brown faces, even in that space at the corporate level. And so they're able to walk into a chamber of commerce meeting as a 17-year-old and say, I'm a business owner.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really great.
Man, that's gonna change so many lives, that's amazing. I originally heard about Black Coffee Northwest from an article that someone posted on Facebook that you all had, an arson at your building before you even opened. Can you tell us a little bit about that incident?
Sure. So on we were supposed to open on October 1st, and so that was our grand opening, or we were going to do a soft open on October 1st. And so the evening or the morning of October 1st, about 3 in the morning, we received a notification, a call that our building was on fire. And so that's like it was 3 in the morning. That's not any kind of message anyone wants to get at
No.
3 in the morning.
Yeah.
But we ended up, going to our location, and we saw that the damage wasn't as bad, like the building wasn't engulfed, but you don't know what you're gonna drive up to. All I could think of was like a movie when they're like and like they drive and there's like, it's
Yeah.
engulfed in flames. And so it
Man.
wasn't engulfed. But what was happening was that someone had attempted to set the gas line on fire. And so when we arrived, we saw a bunch of broken glass or bottles everywhere. And we come to learn that those were Molotov cocktails. And we saw a
Mhm.
bunch of bricks everywhere because someone had attempted to break the window and throw the Molotov cocktails back in our area that like in the area like the control room, I would say, that has kind of all of our electronic things in it. And then
Mm.
when they were unsuccessful there, they went around to the other side and actually pushed a whole bunch of ribage and plants underneath the gas line and doused the gas line with gas, which is just
Wow.
weird. And then they tried to set it on fire. And well, they did set it on fire, but thank goodness the gas line did not catch. The wall did though. So that whole wall was on fire. And so that was a notification that we got. We showed up there. I was just emotionally exhausted at that point because you're planning for a soft launch, like we're getting ready to go, and then here's that. And so we knew it was a hate crime, and so we knew the reason why they were doing this, and because we had received some messages before, just that black coffee wasn't welcome in the neighborhood, and that black coffee was racist, and things like that, and chose to just ignore those things. And so when this happened, it just really brought it to life that racism really. We know that exists as a black community. I know that, but I think for our white community, this is another example of that racism exists, and it's in this neighborhood, and it's attacking the very first black coffee shop in this community. And so it was a wake up call for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That sounds like a really scary night, and that's terrible. Yeah, how did you get the notification? Did somebody see it and then called the fire department, or how did that work?
Yeah, so someone saw the fire and then called the fire department. We got notified by neighbors actually on Facebook. So, like the power of social media, right? Before even
Wow, yeah.
the fire department or anyone to reach out to us, we got all these notifications on Facebook that our building was on fire. And so we appreciate the community for that, though. We
Wow.
really do.
Yeah, that makes all the difference to have the backing of people that truly care about you and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So was the damage mostly just that one wall?
Yeah, there were 2 walls, and then, there was glass and things like that. So it was very minimal damage. I
Mhm.
think just the emotional damage, and the hurt that went behind that action, like the
Right.
impact, that impact was much greater.
I imagine. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. And that affected the date of your launch, your soft launch, right?
It did. So it set us back about 10 days. And honestly, a part of that, a couple days of that was just giving our staff time to just take concerns of safety. And we had
Sure.
talked about safety protocols with our staff and making sure that we had de-escalation techniques in place. We were ready. But really, this was a threat to personal safety. And so we wanted to give our staff a couple of days to just recoup. We had great conversations. And then we also got a security company to come out and do more work with our cameras and make sure we had different angles because the cameras didn't catch everything, right? And so you don't know that until something happens. And so it was really, I laugh now because it was time for us to reset and really look at safety, make sure our staff felt safe and supported, make sure our cameras are catching all the angles, and then also to tell the story to the community that this happened. This happened to us because we are Black, and that the community needs to respond to this, right? Like say that hate will not live here and be bold about that, and then also help us by keeping the eye on our building and know that we're going to be a target.
Yeah, I'm glad that I found you guys, but I'm sad that it was because of that, So it's yeah, but I definitely will be one to stand up against that and try to help you all feel more safe as even in my little way of getting this word out here, So that's
Yes.
I can imagine that it can be so scary for this employees working there and then for you all, hoping that all is in the past as far as anything else happening in
Yeah,
that
we
light.
hope so.
So, yeah.
Yeah. We definitely hope so. We hope so that was in the past and that it
Mm.
it won't happen again. But the reality is that it might happen again. And the
Right.
reality is that people, we are a Black business. We're very bold in our stance about being a Black business. And so, someone may do it again. And I guess for us, like the most hurtful part of this is that we have a lot of kids and youth that are working along with us. And so to have to sit and talk to these kids who've been there every day, all summer, painting, like this is
Mhm.
pride and joy. This is something they're so excited about to have to tell them that someone did attack their space. And this is why, and that it may happen again. It just made it all real. It
Right.
really did. It made it real for them. And that was a hard conversation for me to have because I want to provide, you want, every time you work with kids, you want them to feel safe. And I
Mhm.
was unable to provide that for them in that moment. They felt extremely unsafe. But as a leader, I had to have empathy with that and then also go along in the process with them. I felt unsafe also.
Yeah, right, absolutely, like, kind of just letting your guard down with them, I imagine that helped them a lot to be able to be in it with you. Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's hard, I imagine. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I imagine you've had to share that a few times since that happened, and, I can imagine reliving that, it may not be fun, so I appreciate you sharing that with us.
No problem. I would say that it's not fun to share and it's hurtful to share, but it's a part of the process,
Mhm.
right? And nothing that you do that's gonna have an impact and purposeful comes easy. It's gonna come with these distractions and this noise. We call it outside noise. That's gonna continue to happen. But if we stay true to who we are as a community-based organization, I feel like we're able to overcome and keep going, keep doing the work that we know we're supposed to do. So it's hard to tell, but it's also a story I like to tell because it's a part of the process. And it's a part of the
Mhm.
process that nobody likes to talk about. With any new business, right? It's not pretty, it's not fun, it's sometimes real ugly.
Right.
But for this, it's a great story. Not a great story to tell, something to highlight and to tell people that this does happen and racism does exist, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. It's very important to hear and to know that it's still going on so that we can face it. I saw some photos of your guys' soft opening just this past weekend, and it looked like it was just a massive success. Did it feel like that?
It felt like a huge success. It felt like confirmation to us that what we're doing is right because we have never owned our own brick and mortar space. My husband and I have never. We've never hired people. So
Mhm.
we're learning all of this, and we have such a great community around us that are helping with every aspect, like business taxes. I'm like, someone help! Like, I don't want to end up in jail. Like,
No kidding, yeah.
somebody help me with this. But it's been really great. Like people have rallied behind us. So yeah, I'm just excited. I'm so excited. And that was the biggest piece for me is like the community came together to help us.
Yeah, that's so huge. It's wonderful. I'm so excited to go visit. I'm living north of there now, but we used to live in Shoreline, right by, oh, now I can't remember the high school. Well, right by where
Shorewood.
Kellogg is. Yeah, Shorewood.
Oh,
Shorewood.
Shorecrest. Shorecrest.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, Shorecrest. I
Yeah.
get the 2 mixed up, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids will correct you. I had to learn that
Oh, I
lesson
bet.
real quick.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That's great. You mentioned a story with your son that was involved in the start of all this as well. Would you like
Yes.
to share that?
On Super Bowl Sunday in 2018 now? Time is flying by.
Mm,
My son, we live out in Edmonds. He had a school project that he needed to complete. He had a photography project and, typical, he was a senior in high school. Like the project was due at midnight. It's like
mm,
after the
yeah.
game, he's like, you have to get this done right now. So it was one of those like, go do it and
Mhm.
come back. So my daughter was going to be his model, and so they got my daughter got all dressed up to go be her brother's photography model. And so they went to a Greek restaurant where we visit all the time, and also a Jack in the Box, which is in Aurora. And in between the Greek restaurant and the Jack in the Box lives a bar. And so my kids were on the property. They were on, just in the parking lot taking photos because they were like, it has good lighting. And someone inside the bar so that they recognized him as like a local gang member
Mm,
and thought that he was coming to rob them and break into their building. And so they started, yelling out the window for my kids to go away, which they did. And then this angry mob of grown adult men and women chased my kids off the property, yelling the N word at them with a bat.
mm,
And so it was in the media. It was really terrible, and they ended up getting arrested. There were federal hate crime charges, and when I watched that video of my son being chased off like that, and I'm so thankful every day that he's not on a T-shirt, he's not a hashtag, that he's alive to tell the story. Because if they
mm,
would have got a hold of him, we don't know what the outcome would have been.
right.
So in that very moment, after we went through all the media for that, and we did a series on King 5 called Talking to Your Kids About Race, because at that moment we felt so unsafe in our own neighborhood. I'd never felt that way. I know that we live in the Edmonds area and there's not very many people that look like us. And we know that we've given our kids all of the talks. Like my son, when he got his car at 16, we're like, you cannot drive around this neighborhood with your music up. Although that's what he wanted to do because he's 16, right?
Yeah,
But the
of
first thing he
course.
did is got this great system, but we're like, you can't
Mhm.
do that. You cannot do that here. You have to follow the rules. You can't be downtown Edmonds hanging out with the other kids from your class. And we gave them all the talks, and the one time we felt unsafe where his life was in danger is him just doing a school project because they couldn't find anywhere else to do it. And so from that moment forward, I was committed to finding spaces for Black and Brown youth to be and feel safe, period.
Mhm.
And so we started doing some outreach work at various locations on Friday nights and just hosting kids. And we're like, and I start reaching out to neighbors in our neighborhood, like, are you a safe space? Are you a safe business for Black boys to be? Because my son, he's 6'7", so he's a big
Oh,
kid.
wow.
Yeah, it's like a size
He's tall.
14 shoe. He's a big
Oh,
kid.
man.
He plays basketball at Western. Like he's a
Mm,
student athlete. But in that moment, no one cared. They didn't see that. They just saw a big Black man. They thought he was a big
right.
Black man. He was 7. He wasn't even 18. I think yes, he was actually 18. But they just saw like this big Black man and thought that he was, coming there to hurt them. And so since that moment, I made it my mission to find spaces and places for Black and brown kids to be, especially boys, to be safe.
Mhm.
And so that's when this opportunity was presented to us to actually be in this space and buy this business without hesitation. We said yes. Now, do we have the financial means for this? Have we ever done this before? The answers for those are no. But I was so committed. I'm like, this is it, and we have to figure it out. So we
Hmm.
actually started this only 3 months ago.
Oh,
3 months
really?
ago is when we actually got this property became available. The business became
Mm.
available about 3 months ago, and we just
Wow.
said we're gonna do it. And my husband, I have to like bring him along sometimes because I'm like the one
Mhm.
that's like, let's do it all.
Sure. Yeah.
But it just feels right. And ever since we started doing this, we just start getting more and more kids and youth involved. And so that's really what launched this and started this. And now my son, and my daughter have their own business and their own space in place now that they can share with their friends and others in the community. So that it really is full circle for us. And when we were doing a lot of press and interviews, and I start teaching racial equity classes and start consulting with other businesses on how to prevent this from happening in their space and what to do when difference shows up, whatever difference is. So when someone different shows up at your business or in your neighborhood, what do you do? How do you respond? And so I start teaching cultural introduction, like cultural understanding classes, so people could understand and start learn this language. So my daughter started teaching race and parenting classes, and we just started educating our neighbors and our community, because in that moment we really could have just left and said that it's just not safe for us here anymore. Really did.
Right.
But we decided to stay and educate and tell the story and say that we're not going to leave. We're going to stay right here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you did. Education is so powerful, and I'm sure that's making such a huge difference for so many people. And I imagine that must be, also a big burden or hard, at least, to do in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Are you still doing that work, the education piece, or has the coffee shop kind of taken over for now? Or
I'm doing both actually. And
Mhm.
so really our motto is at Black Coffees, like, I want you to come in for coffee and then leave with something. So if you left with a new thought or idea, or if you left with being challenged on something that, a
Mhm.
thought or thinking that you did have, or learning a new term, or hearing a story. And so my racial equity work is just embedded into the fabric of this business and building. Everything that we're doing is intentional. Everything we're doing is an intentional because I'm using my equity lens. And so they've just kind of come together, which is really great. So I'll be hosting coffee and chats where I'll continue that work. Also using this model out in the community as I continue my work in the equity work in the community, and say, if you keep your ears to the ground, if you respond to the community appropriately, everything else will fall in line,
Mhm.
right? Like it will all fall in line. And so I'm a systems thinker, and my equity work is really rooted in the systems because we're all
Mhm.
a part of a system. And so we need to go in and disrupt that system. And so
Mhm.
that's what I charge people to do. I'm like, find out what the system is and disrupt it.
Yeah, such good work.
Yes. I would just say, like, for me as a mom and a wife and a woman, a Black woman, just trying to find my space and find my voice in this world has been really hard. It's been really hard for me. I feel like I'm just starting to find that now. I worked all my life because we grew up where we just worked. I saw my mom work. I saw my dad just work all the time and not really have a balance or learn about self-care, or how do I balance that? And so that was me for so long. I'm just thankful now that I'm learning the importance of self-care and taking care of myself and balancing out things. So at the end of the day, if everything is not done on my checklist, then it's fine.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sweet, and get up and do it again. And I'm thankful to be able to have those conversations now with teens, especially young Black girls, because that's not something that was modeled a lot in our homes. And so I love to tell that story of just self-care and how important, especially right now. But right now we're going to set up, this is going to be the expectation going forward, is that we take care of ourselves.
Was there something that shifted that kind of made you realize how important self-care was?
It was. I was working. So I quit my job to do this coffee shop. I was working a job as an executive director during a pandemic, had to do layoffs. It
Mhm.
was a lot of stress. It was a lot. And I was also dealing with racism in that space as well.
Mm.
Direct racism, being called the N word. I had emails sent to me of monkeys.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty awful. And it was just because I was an executive director and I was Black, their first Black executive director over an all-white staff, and I had to lay people off. And so
Mm.
that's where it got really, really ugly because, how dare I lay off white people really is what it came down to. I
Mm.
was getting threats and I just want to help people. I just want to make sure people are successful. So I start internalizing a lot of the things that were said to me. And I ended up getting actually very sick. I thought I was having a heart attack. I had to go call 911. And it
Mm.
came down to it after all the testing and, whatever the doctor, it really came down to my doctor's like, I think this is stress related. And I was like, no, like, keep looking, like, do some
Right.
more blood work. That cannot be it. I am fine.
Right.
I got this. And I had like cardiac issues due to stress. And they're like, you need to relax and take time for yourself and recover from this event. And I did. My husband forced me to just disconnect and take a couple of weeks and just take care of myself. And I started feeling better and I started eating better. And I went and I've always been in therapy, but it was more just intense now, like take care of myself. And I needed someone to hold me accountable to that. And
Mm.
my
Yeah.
therapist held me accountable to that. Like, are you taking care of yourself? And I had to actually heal from that. And I will never go back.
Yeah.
I will continue
Wow.
to take care of myself and model that for my kids and every other woman or youth or anyone that I work with who's in my sphere of influence is self-care because I wasn't. I was up, I'm up stress eating whatever is in the kitchen,
Hmm.
cookies, french fry, whatever, not sleeping, not working out, and almost ran myself into a grave, literally. And I just will not ever do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds scary.
Yeah, it was scary and I didn't wanna accept it. I really wanted to fight back and be like, "No, there's something else wrong with me. It has to be something else." I was like on WebMD,
Mm.
like going down this rabbit hole of like,
Mm.
it can't be because I didn't wanna take responsibility for it. I didn't
Mm.
wanna say like I didn't wanna change my behavior.
Right.
I wanted to keep doing what I was doing, but not be sick.
Right. Right.
And that isn't gonna work.
Mhm. Yeah, you kinda can get stuck on this, like, "Well, this is what's working because here I feel like I'm in control and can figure this out, and this is what I know," and to think of things shifting in any way, that can be super scary because it's like, it's all up to you, kind of. I mean, you have a good support system, it sounds like, but kind of a daunting shift, I imagine.
It is, and I have a good support system, but I still had to make the decision to do it.
Mhm.
And I also had to get people around me who were gonna hold me accountable to doing it. And so I made sure I had a lot of people who were like my yes people, right? Like whatever's going on, we're like, yes, girl, that's perfect. Even if it's making it worse, or if I
Mm.
needed people around me who were the harsh critics.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I had to build that into this, like, accountability partners, and I had to tell people, like, make sure I'm held accountable to if I'm overworking, if you see me spiraling, call it out.
Mhm.
Call it out and tell me to be done for the day, and mostly came from my husband. I mean, when he got that permission, it was like he was like, "Yes."
He was just waiting, right?
Right. I was like,
Uh,
"Dude, no, calm down." And then I actually had that conversation with my kids, my teenage
Mm.
daughter who's 17.
Mhm.
And I was like, we're in this together and she's modeling my anxious, stressed out control behavior. Like I see
Right.
her modeling that and I'm like, we gotta break this and I'm gonna break this with together. So
Yeah.
you call me out and I call you out. And it's just worked. And it's not traditional, but it's just what's worked for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Being able to be open and vulnerable and like, here's what it is and help each other out. That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Well, there's a couple questions that I enjoy asking each guest. It's really fun for me to hear what everybody says. There's a different answer every time. So, one of those is what brings joy or fun into your life?
What brings joy and fun into my life right now is really being at home with my family. We are the most creative, silly bunch ever. My whole family are musicians. So my daughter sings, I sing, my husband plays the bass, my son plays the
Mm,
drums, we have keyboard. And so at any random moment, we'll just break out with like a whole musical
that's awesome. Yeah.
about whatever. It could be a commercial that we saw on TV. We usually have some kind of like jingle happening all the time, but we'll go into like full band mode. Like
Totally.
break out
Cool.
and dance around the house. And, my dog, I'm like, he's our third child. If we had a third child, it would be like the worst spoiled
Yeah.
child ever.
Oh.
But like he's funny and silly, and I mean, we do things like play hide and seek with the dog
Mhm.
at home, but we just have fun. It brings me joy to come home and just have fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. What
Yeah.
kind of dog do you have?
He's a Chihuahua.
Okay. Yeah.
He's just, yeah.
When I heard him before we started, it sounded like a smaller dog, but I wasn't
Yep.
sure.
Small, fussy, bossy. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. But so fun.
Yeah. So then my last question for you, what would make you feel genuinely equal?
What would make me feel genuinely equal is now that I would need everyone to understand that systemic and institutional racism is real and it's embedded in every system, everywhere. And so as you're out in the world walking around, if you just know that and accept it, you'll see when things are unfair and you'll call it out and you'll hold that, whatever that is, accountable and try to change it and fix it. And so I really don't, I'm not look, we don't want we want true equity, which means that you have to do things differently to make sure that each individual or each group is successful. If we abolish these systems, right? If we or change the systems, then I'll feel like I can live in a world where I'm safe and free to be me and not feel like I have to act like someone else in order to be safe. And we felt a little bit of that at Black Coffee on Saturday. For
Mm.
our soft opening, I had many Black youth come to me and say they didn't want to leave because they felt safe.
Oh,
They
that's so
felt
good.
like here we build a system where there's justice and fairness. And so someone who would like to come in or anyone that would like to come in and disrupt that, they wouldn't even feel right doing it. Like I want the whole world to be like that, where everything is fair and just. So
Mhm.
you would want to make sure that your neighbor is successful. You would want to make sure that that immigrant family is taken care of and you're supporting their business. That's the kind of world where I feel like I would be equal, is where there's a world where there's justice and accountability are the two things that lead, and fairness. Like I talk to people all the time. I'm like, if you see things that are not fair, you don't need a meeting for that at work. Just call it out. It's not fair. And then how can we fix it? And if the answer is we've always done it that way, I tell people to push, because that's not an answer. That
Right.
is not an answer. And then ask them why and keep pushing. So we've raised like this group of teenagers. There's 20 of them who are like our social justice warriors and workers who hold their teachers accountable to that, who hold their school district accountable to that. And it's amazing to watch adults not know how to respond
Mm.
when they're challenged in that space. But that's what would really make me feel like we're in a world that wants everyone I want everyone to thrive, everyone. And whatever I have to do to make sure everyone thrives, we'll do that. And we want to use Black Coffee as that example. We want everyone to thrive at Black Coffee, our staff to thrive, our volunteers, that whole community to thrive. It's on Aurora, where there's a methadone clinic right next door. It's a high prostitution area, a high homeless I don't care. We want them, those are our neighbors and they're welcome. And I want our whole community to feel like they're safe and that they can be successful at Black Coffee. I want to start that movement there. It just felt good. I just went in my car and I sobbed, because this is
Mm.
the feeling that I wanted to feel my whole life, where I felt safe. I felt I could just be myself, and I could just be me and just live free. Even on Saturday, I had Black friends, like women in leadership positions, come through, and I'm like, you don't have to wait in line. You come in, you will be centered in this space. Like, this is your space, and they didn't want to leave because it just really felt like that. And so that's what I've always wanted, and
Mm.
I personally have always wanted to feel like I could be me also. And so that I felt that on Saturday for the very first time in my life as a Black woman in this area, and I didn't know what to do with that feeling but cry.
Mm.
I
Wow.
didn't know what to do with it. I had never felt that
Mhm.
before, ever.
Wow. I'm so glad that you were able to feel that and have that for that Saturday. And sounds like from now on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love being there. I mean, my husband and I, we were like, we're not going back to the shop. We went yesterday. Today, we force ourselves to stay home
To rest. Yeah.
to rest. But my husband's on his way there right now. And I'm like, babe,
Mm.
no, come home. But it just feels so good to be there. And it's our heart and soul and our passion all wrapped up in one building. And I just don't want to leave.
Mm. That's so great. I'm so happy for you all. That's so
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so excited.
Sounds like such a beautiful space.
It is. It really is. It's a place of healing and reconciliation, and there were just all walks of life in there, and everyone was just hanging out.
Mhm.
You know, like, the kids did COVID safeties, they were taking temperature, we were socially distanced, there were people outside, people in the corner, like, everyone was just hanging out and laughing and having a good time, and I'm like, "This is what community looks like.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is what
Mhm.
community looks like. How do we keep this going?" And so, the fact that we don't know how to I've never made a cup of coffee and or a shot of espresso in my life before now, like, that didn't matter. What mattered was just bringing community together. That's what mattered to me, and so
Mhm.
I just cannot wait to have everyone experience that. I want
Yeah.
everyone to experience that, and then we want this to be a movement. I wanna open up other Black coffees all over the place, and I wanna do it with Black families and teenagers that wanna be in business, and let's open these things up, and let's, call it your own, and if we can't find a space for Black youth to be, create one. Let's
Mhm.
create a space, and so I'm just excited.
Yeah. It's so awesome. I'm so excited for you all.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see them all pop up everywhere.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
blackcoffeenw.com. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct, blackcoffeeandw.com, and our website was created and managed by, a young student in middle school named Malachi.
Oh,
Him and
wow.
his dad built the website, they built the point of sale system on the website, all the photography. He's in 7th grade.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome.
It is, like, phenomenal.
That's
I
amazing.
And our social media, is done by a young lady who's 17. She's 17 in 11th grade, but
Wow.
they just know what to do, and I always challenge adults, like, if you just let them thrive without barriers, they're amazing. They know what to do, they're just doing it, and I'm just like, "Alright, y'all do it." They named the drinks, they did the menu, our fundraising video, they did all that. They're just I wanna see more and more and more young people step into those spaces and lead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Such great opportunities.
it is. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to work myself out of having to have work for the rest of my life, so I'm like, "We're gonna raise up an
Yeah.
army of people, of teenagers to be the
Yes.
next CEOs," right? And take this
Mhm.
thing and run with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm. Yeah.
Are there any other businesses or organizations or anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I would like to talk Zuri's Donuts. So Zuri's Donuts is located in Edmonds. It's a Black-owned donut shop. They are phenomenal and have been amazing because the Davis is the owner there. He, was his first time opening a shop as well. I think he's been there for about a year.
Mm,
But we just walked in. I was like, "Hey, we're about to open a coffee shop. We've never done this before. Can you help?" And he jumped right in. Like, "This is what you need to do. These are for your signs, your windows." Like, done. And
awesome.
so that was amazing. And then also Dee's Designs is another small Black-owned business who did all of our decals for our windows, all of our signage, all of our staff shirts, all of our hats, masks, everything. She did all of those things from her house, which is phenomenal. Last one is She Stands in Strength, which is a woman-owned business, and she's a white woman, and she made a line called "Moving from Ally to Accomplice." And the
Mm,
conversation is challenging our white neighbors and how to show up, especially right now in this time, what that looks like and how to do it. And she's been phenomenal and amazing. So many in Walnut Street Coffee in downtown Edmonds. I didn't know how to make coffee. And she was like, "I'm gonna train you how to be barista." I was like, "Okay." So
that's
like
awesome.
yeah, like everyone just popped in and showed up and like actually showed up. Didn't say it, but actually showed up. And so I'm just so happy.
Such a great community of people, it sounds like. Well, Darnesha, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and your thoughts and your excitement for I'm so excited for Black Coffee Northwest and that there's going to be space for people to feel safe and like they can be themselves because that's what everybody's seeking, I think. So
Yes.
but for people who haven't been able to feel that for so long, that's the most important. So I'm really, really excited for you all. And I can't wait to come visit and we'll be touting it all over. So
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been great. I love this conversation, so thank you.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for Take Notice Amplifying Black Stories. Please subscribe and follow us on social media. We are at Take Notice Podcast. It would really help us out if you could take a couple of minutes to review our podcast. Thank you for your support. Take Notice Amplifying Black Stories is produced, hosted, and edited by Allison Preisinger-Higgins, co-produced by Amanda Ray. Music by Version Big 5 featuring Darius Higgins. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking notice.